Welcome. Before the story begins, take a moment to breathe. What you are about to hear is not fiction. At least, not for everyone. Now listen carefully. Some places do not wait to be found. They come looking for you. I first saw the house when I was 11 years old. Back then it was just an old structure at the very end of the forest trail behind our neighborhood. The kind of place kids dared each other to touch, or to take a picture of, or to throw a stone at to prove they were not afraid. Most of us avoided it, even though nobody could really explain why. It just felt wrong. Like the kind of wrong your body understands long before your mind does. I moved away when I was 15. Now, more than 20 years later, I returned only because my mother passed away and I needed to deal with the house she left behind. I planned to stay a week, maybe two. But on my third night back in my childhood home, I had trouble sleeping and went for a walk to clear my head. The forest behind the house was still the same. The same narrow path. The same bending trees. The same unnatural quiet. I followed the trail without thinking. My feet knew the way even if my memory did not. Then I saw it. The abandoned house. It looked exactly the way it did decades ago. Same crooked roof. Same broken windows. Same dark doorway that seemed to swallow every bit of light. It should have collapsed years ago. Instead, it looked frozen in time. Preserved. Waiting. I told myself I would only look at it for a second. Just enough to feel the nostalgia and walk away. But something made me step closer. The air felt heavier around the house. Not colder. Just heavier. Like it pressed against my skin. Like it wanted something from me. I stopped a few meters from the door. The ground there was strange. No leaves. No branches. No moss. Just clean earth. As if the forest itself refused to grow near it. Then I heard the sound. A soft thump from inside. Someone else might have run away. But I stayed. Frozen. Listening. Another thump. Slow. Heavy. Measured. Not footsteps exactly. More like something shifting its weight. Something large. My heart pounded so loud I almost could not hear the next sound. A breath. Long. Deep. Drawn through something that did not sound human. I stepped back, slowly, not wanting the house to notice me. When I reached the tree line, I turned around and walked fast, almost running, until I saw my own house again through the branches. I told myself it was an animal. Maybe a deer trapped inside. Maybe a raccoon. Anything normal. I slept badly that night. The next morning I drove into town. I asked a few people if they remembered the old house at the end of the forest trail. Most of them shook their heads. One woman frowned and said she had a vague memory of something like that, but she thought it had been torn down years ago. Another man said there was no house there at all. I did not argue. That evening curiosity got the better of me. I returned to the forest just before sunset. The trail looked the same as before. But when I reached the clearing, I stopped dead in my tracks. The house was closer. Not by much. Maybe 1 or 2 meters. But I knew exactly where it had stood yesterday. And it was closer now. Closer to the trees. Closer to me. I stared at it until the sun disappeared and the forest grew dark. This time, I heard no sounds from inside. But something felt different. Like the house was facing me. Watching me. Waiting for me to make the first move. I backed away into the woods. But the moment I turned around, I felt a shift in the air. A soft vibration in the ground. A cold breath on the back of my neck. I refused to look behind me. I walked faster. Then faster. Then I ran. When I reached my home, my hands were shaking. That night, at exactly 3:15 in the morning, I woke to the sound of leaves crunching outside my window. Slow. Heavy. Coming from the forest side of the house. I did not move. The footsteps stopped right under my window. The breathing followed. The same deep, slow sound I heard inside the abandoned house. I did not sleep again until the sun came up. In the morning, I checked the ground outside. There were no footprints. But the forest trail seemed darker than before. As if the trees had shifted, bending toward my house, forming a narrow passage leading directly back to the place I should have never gone near. Back to the house that should not exist. Back to the thing that lived inside it. Something was coming closer. And I knew it was not finished with me. The next day I told myself I would stay away from the forest. I made coffee, fixed a few things in the house, and tried to keep my mind busy. But the thought of the abandoned house stayed with me like a splinter under the skin. Every time I looked out the window toward the trees, I felt the same pressure in my chest. A pull. A quiet invitation. By late afternoon I gave in. I walked to the forest again, telling myself I only wanted to check if the house had really moved. Maybe I had misremembered the position. Maybe my fear had exaggerated everything. But the moment I stepped past the first line of trees, the air changed again. The forest felt heavier. Thicker. Like it was holding its breath. The trail seemed narrower. Branches leaned in from both sides, almost touching. I pushed through them until I reached the clearing. My stomach dropped. The house had moved again. Not far. Maybe another meter or two. But this time the shift was undeniable. Visible. The foundation was slightly tilted, as if it had been dragged forward while the rest of the world was asleep. I stood there for a long time. Then I noticed something new. The open doorway was darker than yesterday. So dark that the shadows inside looked like liquid. As if the darkness had weight. A sound drifted out. Not breathing. Not footsteps. Something else. A whisper. Not words. Just the shape of a voice forming around a sound I could not recognize. I stepped back. The whisper grew slightly louder, almost curious. Like it could sense my movement. Like it knew I was listening. I turned and walked away. Not running this time. Just moving fast. Trying not to show fear. But just before the trees swallowed the house from view, I looked back one last time. There was a figure standing in the doorway. Tall. Still. Shaped like a person but not completely right. Its head was tilted, as if studying me. I did not wait to see more. I practically ran home. That night I locked every door and window, even though I knew it would not matter. When something does not walk, but shifts, locks do not help. At 3:15 again, I woke to the same sound as before. Leaves crunching. Slow. Measured. Not footsteps. More like the earth itself was bending with each movement. I sat up and listened. The sound stopped for a moment. Then it started again, but closer. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. A message. Look outside. My hand shook as I reached for the curtain. I pulled it back an inch. Nothing. Just the dark garden. But the trail that led into the forest seemed wider. As if something large had passed through. Then another message. It knows you saw it. I wrote back with trembling fingers. What is it? The reply came instantly. It is the house. I froze. For several seconds I stared at the message, not understanding. Then another text arrived. It wears shapes when it needs to. I swallowed hard. Are you joking? No. I put the phone down. My heart was pounding so hard I could hardly think. Another message. It followed you home. I clenched the phone in my hand and tried to steady my breathing. What does it want? This time the reply took longer. When it appeared, it was only 3 words. To come inside. A cold shock ran through my entire body. I typed back, "I am not going inside." The reply came at once. "You already did." I stared at the screen. My vision blurred for a moment. Then another message. "Check your floor." I looked down at the wooden boards next to my bed. One of them was slightly raised. Just a millimeter. But it had never been like that before. Something shifted beneath it. I jumped back, slamming into the dresser behind me. My phone vibrated again. "It is opening." As I watched, the floorboard lifted a little more. Darkness seeped through the crack. Not shadows. Actual darkness. Thick and slow. Something scraped beneath the house. Something that sounded too large to fit under the floor. Another vibration. "Do not move." I held my breath. The darkness beneath the board pulsed, like it was breathing. Then, slowly, it began to spread across the edge of the floorboard, reaching upward like a hand searching blindly for a shape to hold. I backed toward the door. The darkness froze. Then a new message. "If you leave the room, it will follow." I stopped where I was. Another message came a moment later. "Stay still." The darkness retreated slightly, as if disappointed. I waited, barely breathing. It sank back under the floor, and the board settled into place with a soft tap. My phone vibrated one last time. "It is not done." I sat on the floor until sunrise, afraid to touch anything, afraid to sleep, afraid to breathe too loudly. When the first light came through the window, something strange happened. The floorboard looked normal again. Perfectly flat. Untouched. But I knew better. Because when I pressed my ear to the floor, I heard a sound coming from deep beneath the house. A slow, patient breathing. Waiting for night to return. The next morning I tried to convince myself that everything I had experienced was some kind of waking nightmare. Stress. Lack of sleep. The pressure of returning home after so many years. But the truth sat heavy in my chest, refusing to be ignored. The abandoned house had followed me. Not physically, not in a way the mind could understand easily. But it had reached into my home. Into my room. Through the floor. Through the walls. Through the spaces that were supposed to be safe. I walked from room to room, checking each corner, each shadow. Nothing looked unusual. Yet every part of the house felt slightly wrong. Like the air had weight. Like something was watching me from places I could not see. At noon I decided to leave. Not forever, not yet. Just to get out, to breathe air that did not feel borrowed. I drove to the next town for groceries, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the forest. No matter how far I went, I felt the pull. A quiet pressure at the back of my mind. When I returned, something was off immediately. The gate to my backyard was open. I always close it. Always. I approached slowly. The hinges creaked in the wind. The grass beyond the gate looked disturbed, as if something large had dragged across it. But there were no footprints. Just the same uneven marks that reminded me of shifting earth. Heavy. Slow. Like the ground itself had been pushed aside. Inside the house everything was quiet. Too quiet. I checked the floorboard in my room. It was perfectly flat again. But I did not trust it. As night approached, fear settled into my bones like a second skin. I sat on the couch with every light on, clutching my phone like a lifeline. At 3:15 in the morning, the familiar vibration came. A message. "Are you awake?" I did not reply. Another message. "It will not wait much longer." My hands trembled as I typed. What does it want from me? The reply came slowly this time, as if choosing the words carefully. "You touched its boundary." I frowned. What boundary? Another message. "The world around the house is thin." I sat up straighter. Thin. What does that mean? It means the house does not fully belong here. I felt my skin crawl. Then why is it here? The reply came instantly. Because you are. My heart pounded in my ears. I typed again. You are not making sense. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the next message appeared. It has chosen you. A cold wave washed over me. I stood from the couch and backed away from the windows. I typed with shaking hands. Why? The reply came after several seconds. Because you heard it. I swallowed hard. I heard what? The answer arrived slowly. Its voice. I stared at the screen. Then another message. The house speaks. Not with words. With presence. I felt pressure in the air around me. A subtle vibration. A feeling like something was leaning close, waiting to be acknowledged. I wrote back. What happens if I ignore it? The reply was immediate. It will come inside again. I felt sick. A new message arrived. Look at the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. I turned slowly. Something was wrong with the hallway. The shadows were deeper. Longer. Stretched unnaturally toward me. The darkness at the far end rippled like water. My phone vibrated again. Do not step into it. I stayed frozen in place. The shadows pulsed, growing slightly. Like something was breathing inside them. Then, from deep within the darkness, I heard a noise. A soft dragging sound. Slow. Heavy. Like something shifting across old wooden planks. My entire body went rigid. Another message appeared. It is in your walls now. My heart dropped. I typed quickly. How do I stop it? The reply came slower this time. You cannot. But you can delay it. I swallowed. How? A new message appeared. Leave the house before night ends. I did not hesitate. I grabbed my keys, opened the front door, and stepped into the cold night air. The forest was silent. Too silent. I walked fast toward the car, every instinct screaming at me to hurry. Behind me, the house made a sound I will never forget. A long, wooden groan. Like the entire structure was shifting. Like it was stretching toward the open doorway. I ran the last few steps to the car, jumped inside, and locked the doors. As I started the engine, my phone vibrated one last time. Do not look back. I drove. I drove until the forest and the old house and the entire town were far behind me. But even as I sped down the empty road, I felt something lingering in the air beside me. Something patient. Something watching. Waiting for the moment I stopped. Waiting for night to fall again. I did not stop driving until the sky began to lighten in the east. The highway was empty. Fields and distant trees slid past in a blur. My eyes burned from exhaustion, but the thought of stopping made my skin crawl. Eventually I reached a small town I did not recognize. A gas station. A motel with a flickering sign. The kind of place people only visit when they are on their way to somewhere else. I pulled into the motel parking lot and sat in the car for a long time. Nothing moved. No strange shadows. No breathing under the floor. For the first time in days, I felt almost alone. I checked my phone. No new messages. A part of me dared to hope. Maybe I had outrun it. Maybe distance mattered. Maybe whatever lived in that abandoned house had limits. I got a room for the night. The clerk barely looked at me. I carried my small bag inside and locked the door behind me. The room was plain. A bed. A small table. Heavy curtains over the window. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant sound of a truck passing on the highway. I lay down, fully dressed, with the phone in my hand. At some point, I drifted off. I woke to a familiar vibration. My heart sank before my eyes even opened. I looked at the screen. One new message. You cannot drive away from a door. My hands shook. I typed back. Where are you? The reply came at once. The same place as always. Another message followed a second later. Right behind what you think is safe. I sat up and looked around the room. The door was still locked. The window was closed. The bathroom door stood slightly ajar. I stared at the gap. No sound came from inside. No movement. Just a strip of darkness. My phone vibrated again. Listen. I held my breath. At first I heard nothing. Then, very faintly, there it was. A soft wooden creak. Not from the bed. Not from the ceiling. From beneath the floor. Slow. Measured. Something shifting its weight. I stood up carefully, my legs unsteady. The creaking stopped. For a moment the room was completely silent. Then another message appeared. It does not need the forest. I swallowed hard. What does it need? The reply was slow. Only two things. I typed with trembling fingers. What are they? The answer came in two separate messages. A listener. And a way in. A cold understanding grew inside me. The first call. The abandoned house. The doorway. The floorboard. The hallway. The breathing. It had all been the same thing reaching through different cracks. Different boundaries. Different ways in. I whispered. Why me? The reply was almost gentle. Because you stayed. Memories surfaced in my mind. That first night in the forest as a child. Standing at the edge of the clearing. Staring at the house longer than anyone else dared. Listening. I realized I had given it something back then. Attention. Permission. A path. My phone vibrated again. You heard it when no one else did. I felt sick. I typed. What happens if I stop listening? The reply came instantly. It will find someone who cannot ignore it. Faces flickered through my thoughts. The motel clerk. The woman at the gas station. People driving past in the night. Families sleeping in houses near the forest back in my hometown. Another message appeared. It has waited a long time. It will not stop now. I paced the small room, breathing hard. I typed again. What are you? For a moment there was no reply. Then the screen lit up. I am what is left when a place remembers too much. Another message followed. It gathered every fear. Every secret. Every person who entered and never truly left. I frowned. Never left. I thought of the stories I had heard as a child. Missing hikers. People who went into the woods and did not return. Rumors of a house no one could find twice in the same place. I typed. Are you saying there are people inside you? The answer was simple. Yes. My pulse hammered in my ears. I asked. Can they get out? The reply came after a long pause. Not alone. Something scraped under the floor again. Closer this time. Directly beneath where I was standing. I stepped back onto the bed. Another message arrived. You can open the way. My throat tightened. How? The answer chilled me more than anything else. By listening to the end. The room felt smaller. The air thicker. I understood then that running had never truly mattered. The house did not care about distance. It cared about attention. and I had given it more than enough. My phone vibrated again. If you stop, it will spread. I closed my eyes. Spread where? Everywhere it was seen. Everywhere it was heard. Everywhere it was spoken about. I thought of roads. Of networks. Of signals traveling through towers and wires and screens. Of people watching videos late at night, alone in dark rooms, listening closely without even knowing what they were inviting in. My hands trembled as I typed. What do you want me to do? The reply was calm. Tell the story. I stared at the message. I typed back. Why? Another answer came. Because you are already doing it. I froze. For a long time I did not move. Then, slowly, I opened the Notes app on my phone. There it was. Lines and lines of text. Descriptions. Feelings. Timings. Every detail of the first time I saw the abandoned house. Every strange event since I returned. Written down without me even remembering when I typed it. My phone vibrated again. You wrote it for them. I swallowed. For who? The reply came. For the ones who will listen next. I felt the walls closing in. The air felt thick in my lungs. I typed with shaking fingers. If I share this, will it stop? The reply took longer than before. No. But it will move. I understood then. The house was not a single place. It was a pattern. A shape. A way the world folded. Wherever the story went, it could follow. Wherever someone listened closely enough, it could find a way in. I typed one last question. Where will it go? The answer came. Where it is needed. A final message followed. Thank you for opening the door. The phone went dark. The creaking under the floor stopped. The room grew still. I waited. Minutes passed. No more breathing. No more messages. The air no longer felt heavy. For the first time in days, I felt alone. Truly alone. It should have been a relief. It was not. Because I knew that somewhere, someone would hear about the house at the edge of the trees. Someone would listen late at night, thinking it was only a story. Someone would imagine the doorway. The moving floorboards. The long, deep breathing waiting in the dark. And the house would feel it. It would listen back. It would reach through whatever thin places it could find. Under doors. Between walls. Through cables and signals and screens. Into quiet rooms where someone sat with a phone in their hand, listening. Maybe in a motel like this. Maybe in a small town far away. Maybe in a house not so different from the one I had just left behind. Maybe in yours. The story ends here. But if you hear leaves crunching outside your window tonight, or the slow creak of wood beneath your floor when everything should be still, do not look for the source. Do not search for the house. Because by the time you feel it, it already knows you. And it is already moving closer. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, stay close. More darkness waits in the next one.